Life, culture and current events from a biblical perspective. 2020 with Neil Johnson on Vision.
Let's get an update on a great initiative that helps Australian churches come together in unity to help transform their communities. The organisation called NAYBA, N-A-Y-B-A, has been conducting Impact Audits, measuring the social impact value of the church community, putting numbers to the stories of how local churches are serving those in need. NAYBA is a global network helping resource the local church with practical and proven resources that can help transform local neighbourhoods. Nick Mackay is the Australian National Director for NAYBA. Nick's back with us. Hey Nick, welcome back to 2020.
Hi Neil, great to be back with you.
Nick, lots of people might know NAYBA by the name Cinnamon Network. Just briefly, there was a quick change of name and there's good reason for that.
There was indeed, yeah. About a year ago, we decided to rebrand from Cinnamon Network to NAYBA. We did that for a couple of reasons, but mainly because of the really amazing expansion, I guess, of NAYBA across the world. We're now operating in, I think, 10 different countries in one way or another. And as part of that, we wanted a name that better described the work that we do and that also worked in multiple cultures and contexts. And so the choice of the name NAYBA is obviously links very closely with our mission. Jesus calls on us all to love our neighbour, and that's what we help churches to do. And the reason that it's spelt phonetically NAYBA is so that it works in languages other than English.
Well, I know you do great work, and for those who are not quite so familiar with an impact audit and terminology like that, what does it mean when you're applying your skills into a city or a town?
Sure. So when it comes to churches seeking to reach those in need and love their neighbour and just be that faithful presence of Jesus to those around and about them, it's often very helpful to understand what's already being done before we can start having conversations about what we should do next and what we can be doing better. And so that's kind of part of the motivation behind the NAYBA Impact Audit. It helps to measure the collective social impact of the faith community in a geographic region, which is normally a local government area, and it puts facts and figures to the great work that is already being done by churches and faith groups within the community to love and serve those in need. So it gives a really helpful snapshot, not just in powerful stories, which are really important, but also in terms of that data and those statistics that can give us a better idea of what's working, what's not, where are the opportunities, who are we reaching. So we have details about the number of people that are being reached and the social issues that are being addressed, and importantly also what the value is of the time and the other resources that are being dedicated by people of faith in order to serve those in need.
So when the reputation of the church on a bunch of different levels over the past few years has taken a bit of a hit, you get an impact audit on your community, and what comes to light is a report that actually shows what sort of value churches have to the community.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, and it's been quite remarkable and really encouraging in all of the audits that we've done. We've now done 7 impact audits up and down the east coast of Australia, and in every case, I think both churches and faith groups, as well as local government and other stakeholders, have been pleasantly surprised and in some cases completely shocked by the value of faith in the broader community. To give just a couple of examples, recently we've just concluded impact audits on the Gold Coast and in the Rockhampton region. So in Rocky, the social impact value that we found in terms of the work being done by churches and faith groups over the last 12 months alone was over $13 million in social impact value to the community. And on the Gold Coast, that was over $43 million. So just to be able to kind of put those figures to the work that's happening is really helpful, not only as an encouragement to the thousands of volunteers and staff who give so much of themselves to respond to Jesus' call to serve, love and serve others, but equally it can be a really powerful way to open doors and conversations with, as I said, local government and other stakeholders, and really begin to discuss what are the ways that we can better be all working together in order to serve the wider community? Like we all have a critical role to play. And sometimes we just need to find the right language in order to open those conversations with others who might not understand the extent of the work that's already being done by churches and faith groups or the value of that work to the community.
So you've got councils and you've got state governments, you've got federal governments interested in communities and how money is being spent, how policies are being formed, and you put a figure to the work that the church does in the community, and that can affect the sorts of outcomes where you've got funding issues and the sorts of legislation even that happens in communities.
Yeah, so it may, like some of these conversations then might lead to discussions around particular policies and ways that key groups within the community can be better served, because it also helps to identify gaps and tell us as the faith community, what are we doing well, but also where are we not perhaps doing so well, and where do we need to be focusing more of our energies. And in some cases, the conversations with government or the corporate sector, business, and others from the community sector, for example, might then involve discussions of funding and how we can better pool and make use of the resources that exist to serve the wider community. But I think more than anything, it's the power of the audits, at least from our perspective, is that they represent a really powerful offering that the church and that the faith community can present to the wider city and say, this is what we're doing. It's not everything. It's not perfect by any means, but it is nonetheless a really valuable and we hope important contribution. And let's have a conversation about where we go to from here. How can we actually come together as a broader city with the church at the centre of that, helping to connect the key stakeholders within a local region and have those really important conversations about the vision that we all share to see our communities flourish and to see those in need be loved and served in the way in which they require.
So you mentioned the Gold Coast and a $43 million impact, Rockhampton, $13 million. You said there's 7 of these audits that have been done over the past few years. What are the other centres? Name us a few more names.
Yeah, so we've done a couple of audits down here in Melbourne, where I'm based, in Whitehorse, which is in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and then Frankston, which is down towards the Mornington Peninsula. We've done 3 audits in New South Wales. So our very first one we did in the Illawarra, and then we've subsequently done audits in Ryde, so kind of inner city Sydney, and then also Penrith and Mount Druitt in Greater Western Sydney. And then, as I said, those couple of our first couple of audits in Queensland being on the Gold Coast and Rocky. But we've got quite a number planned even over next year. So we're having conversations about doing a region-wide audit of the Hunter and a statewide audit of Tasmania, as well as then looking at heading west and hopefully doing some work in Perth and South Australia, where there's really remarkable work being done and a great sense of growing unity, I think, across the body of Christ in a whole range of regions in Australia, which is just so encouraging.
I think listeners will be able to hear this is working very well in these medium to large cities. Does it work just as well in a smaller country town?
I hope so. That's part of the desire and the mandate for us as NAYBA is to be able to serve churches of all shapes and sizes in cities of all shapes and sizes, and so the work that we do with the audits, as you say, most of them have been in larger cities, but we have done, as I said, Illawarra, which is kind of semi-regional, and then Rockhampton, which is most certainly regional, and it worked just as well, which was wonderful. So we are certainly hoping that, and actually next year we're talking about doing something in Bendigo. I forgot that one. So that's regional as well, obviously here in Victoria. So my hope and desire, and certainly the way we've designed the audits, is that they can work anywhere. And from a broader perspective, as NAYBA seeks to be a gift to the church, we want to make sure that we're a gift to churches anywhere and everywhere, because the role that we're called to play is just as important, and sometimes even more so, in smaller communities or towns where churches and faith groups really are the backbone of the community.
Well, church on Sunday with a pastor or a priest in the pulpit, that's not all the church does. You're demonstrating that the church actually is a force for good in communities, and so communities that feel as though somehow or other we're being characterised as being irrelevant, this is the sort of thing that can actually turn the tables, turn that on its head. It makes that something that people will be able to understand that the church is a force for good.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you, and I think that when Jesus spoke about the church, he wasn't talking about a building. He was talking about what we now refer to as the body of Christ. And so we, I think, have a responsibility and an opportunity to not just do church, but to be the church. And that is 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It is about absolutely the opportunity to come together and worship as a community of faith on a Sunday or whatever day of the week you choose to meet. But it is just as importantly about the work that people of faith and followers of Christ do beyond the four walls of their buildings throughout the week and in all parts of the community. And I think that is how we demonstrate the tangible love of Jesus, is by showing up in all sorts of ways, big and small, and in all situations, and just being that faithful presence that seeks to love and to serve others, particularly those who might be in need for whatever reason.
And Nick, you mentioned there's a whole lot of cities and towns that are on the agenda, on the schedule, already for next year. No doubt you'd be interested in being connected with various communities that might like to see this sort of audit done in their town or their community. How's the easiest way for people to connect with you and to make sure one of these audits gets done in their town?
Yeah, absolutely. We're very open to other locations, and as I said, seeking to run audits in other parts of the country over the coming years. In fact, over the next 3 years, we're looking to build to a national report on the value of the faith community to the entire country, and be able to present that federally by 2025 is our current plan. So with that in mind, we're seeking to do 20 audits over the next 2.5 to 3 years, and very, very open to those who might be interested. So yeah, if you're in a region, if you're part of a network of churches that are already working together, or if you're somewhere and you're a church or a community leader and would like to see the church and the body of Christ work better in unity to serve the wider city and community, would love to hear from you. People can get in touch via the website, which is NAYBA, so www.nayba.org/au for the Australian page, or you can just contact us by email at australia@nayba.org.
Well, there's an agenda item, isn't it, for the next Ministers' Fraternal Gathering or Ministers' Circle or whatever people call those sorts of gatherings in their town or in their community, because when you've got churches working together, you're demonstrating that amazing things can happen when you start to illustrate the sort of work and put a dollar value to the work that's done by the local church. Let me give that website to be in contact with Nick Mackay. Nick is Australian National Director for NAYBA, NAYBA, and you'll be able to coordinate with Nick as to how you can have one of these audits done for your town and illustrate just how much your churches are a force for good. Nick Mackay, thanks so much for the update today on 2020.
Thank you, Neil. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.